Every day, as the workday begins on job sites throughout Illinois, an unspoken fear flashes through the minds of those who work in the construction trades. Is this the day that I become injured on the job? And if it happens, how long will it take for me to recover and get back to work to provide for my family? Despite their strong commitment to extensive safety and training, the construction industry remains a dangerous business, and the next accident may be just around the corner. Unfortunately, in Illinois, the workers' compensation system the injured workers must face is often more devastating than the accidents they endure.
I was an electrician for 26 years. One day I was simply carrying some cable up a staircase when I ruptured a disc in my back. I went to a surgeon and he took out a portion of the disc. After that I was still in pain, so we tried rehab for a year, and that didn't work either. He ended up doing a spinal fusion. Didn't help at all. You have this incredible numbness and pain in your back, and there's nothing you can do about it. I had enough hours incurred for the first 2 years that I was fine for a while. But then my benefits ran out and I couldn't afford COBRA insurance. And nobody wanted to communicate with me at all. Everybody kept telling me to be patient. The frustration level was unbelievable. I wasn't working. The workman's comp check wasn't even close to what I was being paid. You take a 40% pay cut, you can barely make ends meet as it is. And meanwhile, you just sit home and do nothing but wait for the phone to ring. The case started in 2004 and we settled in 2007. It took 3 years plus from the time we filed to the time I got a settlement. I still have a bad back and nothing to show for it. And I'll never make up the money I lost in those 3 years.
I always thought it would happen to someone else, and not me. Getting injured on the job. I was running a tower crane on the 35th floor in downtown Chicago. We had ongoing problems with the crane, and as a result, the crane springboarded, just like a diving board, and that threw me into the hoist drum and caught my right hand. It grabbed me and flipped me to the back side of the crane. It severed my right hand, ripped my right arm right out of the socket. They loaded me onto the ambulance gurney, and that's all I remember. When I came to in the hospital, I asked my girlfriend, how are we going to pay our bills with me being hurt? And she said, don't worry about it. Workman's comp was taking care of everything. The guys on the job site and the union locals took up collections. That helped. Everything seemed great at that moment. My bills were going to be paid and I was going to survive. I hired a workman's comp attorney, and he said everything would be taken care of in a year or two, and he would have me through court. But it actually took 4 years before workman's comp was ready to settle. They waited until all of my doctors determined there was nothing more they could do for me, and all the medical processes were completely finished. It was an okay settlement, but by this time I was heavily in debt. Some of the money went to pay off my lawyer, some went to pay off my bills, and what was left went to rebuilding my life and to cover everyday expenses, since I couldn't work and I had no income. Now, my third-party lawsuit attorney kept telling me trial date was close. But there was always another postponement or a continuance. This dragged on forever. 5 years into it, I told my attorney, that's it. We have to settle. I'm out of money. Banks won't lend you money when you don't have any. But my attorney said he knew of a lending institution that could help at 47% interest. I had no option. I had a union pension and Social Security, but that wasn't enough. They lent me the money to pay my bills and to live on for a while, and just shy of 7 years after the accident, we finally go to trial. But it's declared a mistrial and rescheduled for 7 months later. We finally get to court, and the jury comes back with a verdict in my favor, but with a settlement reduction. My attorney got a third plus expenses. I also repaid the money I borrowed to live on at 47% interest. Plus I had to pay back my workman's comp. That left me with little to live on for the rest of my life. I'm 42, and I can't work. There's hundreds of other injured workers out there in the same position as me. If the current system had allowed me to get in and out of court quickly, I never would have borrowed that money to live on. Now I have to figure out how to support my family for the next 30 years on next to nothing. If they could somehow streamline the system, situations like mine would never happen.
Illinois' workers' compensation system was created to help our injured workers and their families, but it's become a nightmare. And unless we create a more efficient alternative, what happened to these workers could happen to any of the thousands of construction workers across the state who risk injury and their lives every day.
The current workmen's compensation system in the state of Illinois is flawed, deeply flawed. It takes too long for a worker to get through, and it's too expensive just for the employer and for the worker himself.
It takes forever to get a case handled. It doesn't really care about the workers getting the best health care, and really doesn't address getting the employee back to work as fast as possible.
I've run into many instances of members where it could take up to 8 years for that member to get himself through the system.
The workers' compensation system in Illinois is really not working, and the reason why is it's very inefficient. It has lots of bureaucracy. It's very litigated oriented. It doesn't really focus on the main mission of the Illinois workers' compensation system, taking care of the injured worker. The medical care is very fragmented. It's not well orchestrated together. There's all sorts of difficulty getting approval for treatment. Right now, it's a very, very inefficient system to the detriment of the injured worker who has to wait for a long time to get approval for medical procedures and help to get them back to work.
So how can we improve this inefficient system? We can begin by working to pass legislation to allow for collectively bargained workers' compensation, a voluntary program where Illinois' union contractors and building trade unions can choose to negotiate a plan that keeps the employee's benefits the same, but will get the employee quicker care and faster dispute resolution than through the traditional state system. This concept isn't new, nor would it be mandatory if passed. Collectively bargained workers' compensation is allowed in 10 states, and the results have been dramatic for the employee and the employer. If it's worked well in other states, it can work here in Illinois too.
Every state should have a collectively bargained workers' compensation program. And the reason is the program is designed to help both the worker and the employer by getting the worker back to work early.
Under the law that's being proposed in Illinois, collectively bargained work comp would not be mandatory for a local union or a local association. They could choose to go down that path and to work through all of the details together, but if they don't want to get involved, they don't have to.
It helps us get the best medical treatment for our members. It helps work with them to get back on the job as quickly as possible, and it helps our contractors control their costs.
The collectively bargained workers' compensation system will lower the cost for contractors because as we get the person the best possible care, those doctors understand that we want to get that person back to work quickly. They're in the system with us. They're partners. So we get the people back to work as quickly as we possibly can. That's a huge savings to contractors. We also know that when they come back, they're ready to go to work. Getting the people back to work 100% ready to go is a huge savings to us. So we do not have to retrain people. We don't have to go out and find new people. The most important asset that we have is our employees. We have to get them back to work as quickly as we possibly can.
Unfortunately, in Illinois, we have something on the order of 100,000 individuals waiting to work their way through the commission at an average delay of something under 5 years.
Right now, there's so many people in the system, it's very bloated, it's so litigated oriented, there's delay from workers' compensation carriers, very, very adversarial. It eliminates, with the alternative dispute mechanism in place, and also the fact that there's a care network set in place, it eliminates all the problems with the current system.
Collectively bargained workers' compensation allows labor and management to meet their workers' compensation needs by shaping a policy that's fair, equitable, and administered by an agreement rather than by a state agency. It simply permits labor and management to deliver benefits and resolve disputes on their own. Unfortunately, the concept is often misunderstood and comes with plenty of questions, such as how does it differ from the traditional system of going through the Industrial Commission? Does someone determine compensability? And are these decisions final? To answer these questions, let's take a look at the Minnesota model. where if a claim is disputed and there's a question as to compensability, the facilitator will first deal with that question and try to resolve it. The majority of cases are resolved at this level. If it can't be resolved at facilitation, it's resolved at mediation. And if it's not resolved at mediation, it will be resolved at arbitration. If a claim is determined to be compensable at the arbitration stage, that's a final decision. For a total disability, the same process is utilized. Again, under the Minnesota program, you can use a fully insured workers' compensation insurance company policy, or you can be self-insured. But whatever program you have, whether it's the insurance company or a self-insured program, it's required to process and pay claims just as in the normal statutory system. It's important to note that the collectively bargained workers' compensation program cannot reduce or enhance statutory benefits provided by state law under any circumstances.
This program is good for the worker, it's good for the employer. If you're an employer that's not part of a collectively bargained workers' compensation program, and you could be, you're paying too much for your workers' compensation insurance. If you're an employee, you will know that if you are injured, you're going to be treated well, you're going to be treated by experts, and you're going to get back to work earlier than if you were not part of this program.
Collectively bargained workers' compensation has many success stories, including the Minnesota laborer who sustained a serious injury to his right eye. He underwent 2 corneal transplants with limited success. The treating doctor was reluctant to provide the parties with a permanent partial disability rating after the last surgery. The parties requested a neutral examination in late February. The examination took place in the first week of March. The report was provided to the parties within 10 days, and the permanent partial disability benefits were paid based on the rating report.
Collectively bargained workmen's compensation is good for labor because, first and foremost, it would be what's best for the members. And that's what we're about, what's best for our members. And it would get those members back into the workforce quicker, would get them compensated quicker, and would allow them to take care of their families while this is going on. And it's always speed is what really benefits the member and his family and the industry.
A number of states in the union have already passed permissive collective bargaining legislation. And to the best of my knowledge, almost every place that this thing has been implemented, it has worked to get the worker back on the job faster, to get him better care, and to lower the overall cost. I simply can't understand why in the world we don't do it in Illinois.
The construction industry is dangerous by nature, and while collectively bargained workers' compensation won't eliminate accidents, it will work to improve Illinois' workers' compensation system that has become a nightmare for contractors and workers. No doubt you still have plenty of questions, and Cisco is ready to help. You'll find a wealth of information on our website at www.cisco.org. At Cisco, we believe it's time to start the conversation, time to unite and work to provide a better system that provides cost savings for the employer, better care for the injured worker, and quickly returns them to the job site so they can provide for their families. After all, having the best care possible should be the goal of every workers' compensation plan. And with voluntary, collectively bargained workers' compensation legislation, we can make it happen here in Illinois.